Well, hi everyone. As Pia said, I'm Nyasha. I'm joining you all from Harare, Zimbabwe, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. So that's a great question. When did I start blogging? I think I started blogging in about 2012. And one of the things I remember distinctly was being asked to blog on a topic that apparently I knew something about. I think it was a topic around communication. And I remember feeling very nervous. This was about 2012 and not really knowing who I was blogging to and what I was blogging for. And feeling a little bit of trepidation as to how to sound smart and how to sound like I knew things in a limited number of words, and just getting myself really anxious. But over the years, I really found blogging to become a tool that I use to express opinions in a way that allows you to have personality, but also expertise, which sometimes is missing from our landscape, that ability to showcase your expertise. So I think that's the short story of when I started blogging. Yeah, let me know if that answers your question or you want a bit more.
Yes, and you said you were really nervous and that, but then how did you get across that? Maybe that would be my first follow-up question on that.
So I think, practice really does help people to get better at things, but I'm also a believer that you must consume what you wish to produce. So also reading other people's blogs, engaging in those kinds of conversations can help you to assess what makes a good blog and what doesn't. And what I mean by that is usually when we read a story as a consumer, just every day when we read, a newspaper story, an article in a magazine, an online post, we're very good at discerning if a story was clear, if it was simple, and if it made sense to us. And I think it's the same when it comes to something like blogging, is just looking around and saying, what kinds of things have I found interesting? What kinds of ways of exploring ideas have resonated with me? And also in that, to try and figure out what your voice is. So I can be a bit goofy, I can be a bit funny to myself. I think I'm hilarious. Not everyone shares that opinion, but I can be all those things. And so, in finding my voice for blogging, was to find what is that balance between what I know and who I am. Where do I locate that authentic voice that allows me to blog in a way that might resonate with readers? But at this point, I'd also like to point out I mostly blog for other organizations and on behalf of other people. So the real trick has been to understand what is the tone and voice and identity of that organization, and what is it that they want to communicate to the world, and what are their opinions about the world that they can't always share in more formal settings. How do we bring those out in a way that allows people to engage in content and also to ask meaningful questions?
Are there some common challenges that you have seen? I mean, you mentioned already a personal challenge that you had faced, like the fear of writing, the fear of exposing yourself, right? But what other common challenges have you encountered in your career, in your journey into training others on blogging?
I think I could spend the whole day on this
one.
No,
but we don't
I
have
will
that
try
much time,
and be concise, like a good blog. I'll try and be short and concise.
So let's put it in the blog format. Maybe let's do the 5 challenges, right?
Okay,
that would be the title,
challenges.
Right? Or the 3, so up to you.
I think that one of the things that really comes across is people sometimes have a lack of clarity of the topic they actually want to address in the blog. So, you start in one place and end up in a completely different place. And the two places, unfortunately, are not related. So just being very aware of what is it that you want this blog to cover, and trying to stick to one narrative or one story. That's the language I like to use, because stories are something we can really relate with. So what is the story that my blog is telling? The other thing I think is that when we say blogs are a place for opinions, sometimes people think that we mean this is now time for a stream of consciousness writing, where you just let everything that pops into your head land on the paper. And while that has a benefit in other places, it's not really very useful for a blog. In a blog, you want to convey a point in a somewhat condensed format. It's not going to be long. It's not supposed to be a thesis. It's supposed to be short and quick, but conveying an idea quite concretely. So it's really important that when you write your blog, you don't just put all your thoughts down and walk away or publish it, but really put your thoughts down and then try and see how they're linking. Try and see if they make sense together. Try and see if they're as clear as they can be. Try and make things short and pithy, right? So that people can see the points that you're making. The other thing is that people write without an audience in mind. And I know that's counterintuitive because you say, well, my blog is my blog. Yes, that's fine. But I think the real thing is, who would you like to be reading this blog, right? So think about what you want them to take away. What's that audience? That can keep you grounded in a way so that you're speaking in a language that's unified. You're speaking in a way that you hope this particular type of reader will understand, and you're giving them information they'll get excited or be interested in. And I think the last thing is really a little bit about formatting issues, right? A blog is not really a thesis, neither is it like an essay. It's a specific way of writing where we want to put short visual information. So make sure our eyes are leading readers to places, make sure that people can find interesting bits in your blog. So those are some of my quick tips. I think I gave 5. I hope they were 5. Those who count.
I counted 4, but maybe I might have missed one because I was also taking notes. And as you know, I cannot do 2 things at the time. Can you maybe tell us a bit more around the developing of the story, right? So that's, I think, was your first tip. You said, lack of clarity on the topic, and then you started to talk about developing the story. Can you unpack that a bit more for me or for us?
So, any story really, since we were starting to learn how to write stories, I remember being in English class being told that a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And throughout life, that's pretty much served me very well to remember that everything I write should have a clear beginning, a clear middle, and an end. And in a storytelling context, we don't start in the middle of the story most of the time, right? We don't start when the action is happening. We start with a little bit of scene setting, a little bit of framing of issues. And so in a good blog, you want to do the same thing. You want to frame your opinions and ideas within an existing context. You want to give a little bit of other evidence or information that helps your reader understand. You want to pull out whatever the key issues are. So you want to walk your reader through some of those key issues. And then you want to get to a conclusion, right? So what? So what that the world is the way it is? So what that forests are being degraded? So what, right? Why is this something important, right? And if there are any solutions as you're doing in your blog series right now, what are those solutions and what will they mean for us? So just being very clear about that storytelling format. And I think it ties back to the point that I was making earlier about layout, right? In that, in your story, make sure that each sentence you use has a meaning, right? Let's not write for the sake of writing, but write something and make one point in each sentence, making sure your paragraphs are nice and short. Because when we read online, the bigger the text, the less likely we are to engage with it. So just looking at those blocks, if possible, include some links to other information. That's one of the great things about blogging, is this ability to link ideas. So if you're not going to spend too much time on something, but you want your reader who might be curious as to how these things are interrelated or linked, or maybe some other work that you've done, you can provide links within the body of your blog to help people go find that information, to help people get that extra info. You also want to highlight anything that is important in your blog. So anything you want to bold it, or maybe use an italicized font, but something to allow the reader's eye to fall at that key piece of information. We also want to use varying sizes of text so that, the eye is able to play around the screen. And something that I've noticed in just a few blogs that I've gone through, and I don't know if this is because of the format of your current blogs, but images are also a great thing to include in blogs, right? Don't be afraid if you're describing a forest as it was in your community 10 years ago versus what it is now. That image can also bring that blog to life. So don't be afraid to use images in a way that helps to support or bring to life some of the content that you have on the page. So that's all part of that storytelling, to draw your reader through a really coherent narrative of what it is you're saying the problem is, or what it is this opinion is, and what it is you hope to be done, or why this is important.
So my question from Nayasa is that simple as, can I make some blogs with my students regarding to forestry related awareness or something related other issues?
Okay, so that's interesting. You could really make a blog about anything. I've read blogs about people following their cats. I've read blogs with 2 points of view where 2 people come together and write together. So I think it's a great idea if you have students and you want to explore certain thematic areas to start a blog. I think what I would suggest is probably to be very clear what type of forestry issues you want to cover, and maybe have some guidelines for how your students can engage in the blogging process. Maybe begin also with just a little bit of training. There's lots of online resources that are really good that you can just look at to help you to frame these blogs and to figure out where these blogs are going. Something I haven't mentioned, but that's just come to mind as you're speaking, is blogs are like, they live on, and they have this great way of building a reputation, building someone's image, and one of the things that is quite interesting is how people are using LinkedIn right now as a platform for blogging. So that's actually a really great idea if you get your students to express some of those ideas and finding platforms or ways where we can share multiple information. So instead of just posting a blog on one platform, you can offer it to other platforms. There are lots of platforms that host multiple blogs, etc. So it's about looking for what fits for your objectives, as well as who you think that potential audience will be. I hope that answers your question.
Basically, as she mentioned that she started blogging in 2012. And I feel like blogging is so much more into the 2010s. And now we're in the 2020s and everything is being taken by TikTok and live streams. And people are like, blogs are not as popular as they were before. So how are you kind of fighting this? Or how do you think that blogs are still relevant right now in 2022 when everybody can just watch a live stream or watch a TikTok video?
I think that's a really good question. And it goes back to some of the fundamentals of why we communicate. So I'll ask you this question, right? So all the TikToks and Snapchats and tweets we see, how many of them can you really find very easily when the topic is no longer trending? How many of them do you go back to or use in a way that might be more substantive? So in this world, as we look at it now, everything is so fast and so much information that we tend to lose a little bit of the nuance that comes. And the reason why we have the issue of someone will say something in 240 characters and we all are aghast is because sometimes we lose that nuance. So in this world, there's definitely the place for people who want a little bit more information, for people who are seeking more information. So I'm maybe old school still. When I go on Twitter, I love it. I love all the short information. I love how quick it is. But when I need to verify things, I actually go and look for places where there's much more information. I go to accounts where people maybe tweet really great things, but I also want to see what other things they've written. I engage a bit more with their content so that I know if I can trust them. So remember, earlier we spoke about this idea of blogs being a place where you can build trust, you can build a reputation, you can build a body of knowledge. And all those things are still as important as our CV or our resume in this day and age, right? Where we share we share short clips about ourselves, we project who we are, but when people want to see a little bit more, there's a place where they can check that consistency of thought. And another thing is, when we are doing content like social media, sometimes one of the things social media is for is to lead people back to places they can get more information. So you can take those same messages from your blog and then condense them into smaller, easier, bite-sized things for social media. But you have somewhere for people to engage a bit more with that complex content. The other thing that I want to talk about is platforms like Facebook, etc. Their algorithms really do mess with the type of information that people are able to see. And what blogging does allow you to do, especially if you use keywords properly, is that it kind of can help you overcome that algorithm trap. When people search for things, those opinions, those types of posts do tend to come up quite highly if you've used proper keywords. So it's a good other thing to have. Communication should be multifaceted. It should be multi-channeled. And it just allows you really to just build that credibility, especially for some of you who are young researchers or those who are looking to be opinion setters in certain ways. That's a place we can go and verify that thinking. And also we can link it to the broader social media stuff that you're using. I hope that answers you, Rihad.
Yes, that was really good. Thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah, I want to ask you how you, in your experience, how you manage address hard themes like discriminations against women, sexual minorities, or indigenous people in blogging.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's a really good question. I hope I do it justice. I think with blogging, as with all things, right, we have to exercise some emotional intelligence, our ability to assess what is necessary to say, what evidence do we have to say what we say, and also to use language that is respectful and language that is engaging. So for most people's purposes, right, you want to share your opinions in a way in which it allows others to connect, and also to set where issues are a bit difficult. You might want to also set what context within which you're speaking to allow people to understand a little bit of some of the nuance. So I'll give an example to maybe help you understand. You know, if I was writing a blog to advocate for LGBT rights in Zimbabwe, it's an issue of law, right? So it's an illegal issue. We don't really discuss it, and that's where it sits. So in my blog, I may couch my blog within the global context and within why it's important for us to look at other examples outside of Zimbabwe to find ways in which we can meet each other. And maybe I'll bring in evidence from other places showing how in countries where there is an openness to these rights, people are more fulfilled, there's less hate crimes, etc. So it's about trying to ensure that you're always looking at these complex issues within a specific context and being very aware that some language can be excluding. So just making sure that you're mindful of that as you write. And also ask other people to review your blog before you post it. Ask others around you to read through it and say, did I do this issue justice? Did I maybe by mistake become discriminatory in my in nature? Did I look at the nuance of this topic well enough? And like I said, remember linking to other things, right? Where we have limited space, ensuring that we've linked to other resources that may be useful to people.
I'd like to ask Nyasha, can I write a blog with the abstract of my research thesis? Is it possible?
So the simple answer is no. You shouldn't publish your abstract as it is as a blog. You're going to have to work at making it a blog, right? An abstract is written in a particular way for a particular audience and with particular kind of outcomes in mind. It's very academic, can be quite dry. So what you want to do is take that abstract and find your voice. Remember, we spoke about what's your voice in that, what's your opinion, what your abstract is introducing your research. So you can take your blog and really look at how you can introduce some of the key themes that you discuss in your research and why these research pieces are important. So that's what I would advise for your blog. Taking the abstract and posting it and saying this is a blog isn't enough. Remember, you want a different, it's another audience. You want to engage them in a different way. And we want to hear your voice. A lot of the time in research, we don't hear the researcher's voice. We hear the voice of science and the voice of what is correct and the empirical evidence and the knowledge. We want to hear a little bit about what Landry thinks and why Landry has approached things in this way and what some of the key things Landry has learned doing the research are. And then you can link your research to your blog to allow people who want to engage with the research in detail to be able to go and look at your research in detail. I hope that answers the question.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm satisfied.
Thank you, Nyasha. Thanks, everybody. This could go on and on, but we really need to move. So big clapping for you, Nyasha. Thanks very much for being with us today. I see that there are a couple more questions in the chat. We'll pick them up and we'll follow up later with everybody. Thanks very much again for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me and all the best, everybody.